On October 26, 1553, Michael Servetus was convicted of heresy and sentenced to death by burning. The following day, he was chained to a post in the city of Geneva. Around his feet were placed piles of wood ready to be lit. What was his crime? Servetus loved Bible truth and was unable to reconcile the teachings of the church with his own studies of the Bible. Michael Servetus died slowly, yet never once did he recant his faith in the Bible as the Word of God. This was by no means the first time fire had been used to dissuade or destroy individuals who loved the Bible and its teachings. Throughout history, the Bible has faced repeated attacks. Empires have tried to destroy it. Religious leaders have tried to hide it. But despite opposition and the threat of death, many have risked their lives and reputations to protect it. The Bible was completed around the year 98 CE. At this point, most, if not all, Christians lived in territory controlled by the Roman Empire. Roman Emperor Diocletian began ruling in 284 CE. Dr. Peter Williams works at Tyndale House, a centre for biblical studies.
Rome didn't have much time for people who didn't like the Roman religion.
Diocletian instigated a persecution, a systematic persecution of the Christians.
Probably the most systematic persecution that any Roman emperor ever undertook. He also was very much against the Christian books, so he wanted to get rid of people's Bibles and copies of books of the Bible.
There's a serious attempt to destroy Christianity, if possible.
Given such extreme opposition, the survival of the Bible and Christianity might have seemed impossible. How did the Bible writings survive this intense opposition? Here in Dublin, we will begin to find the answer. I'm meeting Jessica Baldwin, the head of collections at the Chester Beatty Library. The Chester Beatty Library houses three important papyri, known as P45, P46, and P47. It's believed that these papyri date back to the 3rd century CE, making them some of the oldest known manuscripts of the New Testament.
This is Chester Beatty's Biblical Papyrus number 2, which is also known as P46, and it's the earliest surviving copy of the Pauline epistles. The term papyrus is used quite extensively, but when you look at the manuscript, you can actually see the material that they're made of. So papyrus is made from the pith of the papyrus plant, and it was made in Egypt.
This is interesting because it appears there's a fold that's down the middle of that.
These were large manuscripts. They were substantial. They weren't single scrolls that were rolled and unrolled. For a scholar and for the community at the time, which these texts would have been so vital to have it in a codex form, which could almost, you could turn to the section that you want to refer to. You could really use it as a text to be read, thought about, understood.
Professor McGing showed me these manuscripts in further detail.
These are real gold standard texts. They clearly are the 4 Gospels together and Acts. The letters are all separated out beautifully, smooth, elegant lines, neatly arrayed. That in itself is, I suppose, a tribute to the faith of the people doing it. This was a task that was important. It was important to do properly, accurately, and beautifully.
These have survived because they were contained within a ceramic pot and buried.
These were clearly, carefully tended for. They couldn't really survive in this form otherwise.
Whoever it was that protected these manuscripts showed that they loved the Bible. As the centuries passed, the Bible faced new challenges.
William Tyndale was the first person to seek to translate the Bible from the original languages into English.
Tyndale was born in the late 15th century. He was born in the area of Gloucestershire, but had a chance to go to Oxford and became a priest.
In the 15th century, there was a lot of resistance to the idea that the word of God could just simply be accessible by the general people.
People knew the Latin Bible from church, which was interpreted by the priest for them. They never had direct access to the Bible themselves.
Tyndale was not allowed to do this translation in England. He went to the Bishop of London asking for his permission to translate the New Testament from the Greek, the original text, into English, but was not given that permission.
Such was the opposition to Bible translation that Tyndale later wrote there was no place to do it in all England. And so with the help of merchants sympathetic to his cause, Tyndale fled to Germany, where he could more easily work on his English translation of the New Testament. By 1525, his translation was complete and ready to be printed. The British Library in London holds the answer to what happened next. Dr. Karen Limper-Hertz, a lead curator at the library, is going to help us find out.
So we're looking at a unique copy of the first edition of Tyndale's New Testament, printed in Cologne in 1525. The Cologne fragment is the only known copy of what exists of Tyndale's first edition of the New Testament. The fact that it is a fragment shows that it was a dangerous thing to do. The printer had too much to drink and mentioned that he was printing this pro-Lutheran English New Testament for somebody called William Tyndale. The authorities found out about it and the printer was raided. Tyndale and his partners ran, and this is all that survives today, and they went down the Rhine a bit further to Worms. So the fact they didn't get much further than partway through Matthew is quite indicative of how dangerous it was.
The first complete copies of Tyndale's translation of the Christian Greek scriptures were finally printed in the city of Worms in Germany in 1526. Around 3,000 or more of these books were produced. After leaving Germany, Tyndale moved to Antwerp. This bustling city was ideal for Tyndale. It had a thriving printing industry, and its busy port made it easy for his books to reach readers in England. Professor Guido Latry has kindly offered to show me around the very streets Tyndale would have walked himself some 500 years ago.
What he saw around him here was ordinary people having access to the Bible in Dutch. He wanted the same for his own folk in England.
If you wanted to smuggle Bibles on a large scale into England, this was Northern Europe's biggest seaport.
You can't easily smuggle a big volume and a big format. So tiny loose leaves that were taken to places like this, these underground cellars, the warehouses, and between the leaves of larger books that were not forbidden, the tiny leaves of Tyndale's translation would have been hidden. In London, someone would have recognized, aha, these are the stacks that are marked. I must have a look at these and find the loose leaves of Tyndale's Bible. There were about 30,000 copies of Tyndale's Bible available by the end of his life. This was a brave man, and a big man in terms of courage and in terms of investment of time, and the risk he took are not to be underestimated.
William Tyndale was imprisoned here in Vilvoorde, just north of Brussels. As he languished in prison for over a year, he no doubt contemplated the cruel death that inevitably awaited him. Tyndale is often renowned for his influence on the English language. But his work was more than that of just scholarly ambition. Tyndale loved the Bible. Maybe it can be said of him that he shared the feelings of the psalmist, who spoke of God's word and said, "How I do love your law." As news of Tyndale's death spread throughout Europe, it no doubt concerned other truth seekers who were making their own studies of the Bible. One such man was Michael Servetus, whom we mentioned at the outset. He was born here, in the Aragon region of northern Spain. we have travelled to Villanueva de Siena to find out more about him. Sergio Batches is the director of the Michael Servetus Institute, which runs a museum in the house where it is believed Servetus was raised.
We have a young man who is exposed to the main religious problems at that time that influence his future thoughts about some of the tricky issues related to Christianity, such as, for instance, the dogma of the Holy Trinity. So he wanted to go to the sources, and that's what Servetus thought. The truth must be found in the Bible.
Dr. Marion Hiller has published work on Michael Servetus.
He was sent, probably upon the advice of his father, to Toulouse to study the law. In Toulouse, which was a very restrictive place where reading of the Bible was forbidden, he got involved in serious studies of the Bible. He had intellectual curiosity. At that time, you see, the main issue which people were really discussing in the streets and everywhere was religion.
In 1531, Servetus published his first book, entitled On the Errors of the Trinity. In his book, he questioned the teachings of the Church regarding the identity of God and Jesus. He later wrote, "In the Bible, there is no mention of the Trinity. We get to know God not through our proud philosophical concepts, but through Christ." In his writings, Servetus quoted from or alluded to at least 52 of the 66 books of the Bible. It's clear that Michael Servetus was a man who valued the teachings of the Bible above all others.
Servetus was arrested and was accused of heresy.
This is a crystal clear example of cruelty and religious bigotry.
It was expressed that he has to be punished. And at that time, the only punishment which you could imagine was death.
I guess his driving force was the search of truth, the need to restore Christianity to its origins.
Although various views on Servetus' conclusions have been raised, it's clear he was driven by a sincere thirst for biblical truth. He wrote, "A book has been given us from heaven, so that in it we might search after God." History is full of accounts of those who have risked and given their lives to read, to translate, or to understand the Bible. Their overriding motivation must surely have been the value they placed on the Bible. The Bible has come to us through great opposition. It has survived physical destruction. The simple act of translating it has been outlawed. And those who have strived to read and understand it have often been punished with death. And yet, the Bible and the wisdom in it survives to this day, a faithful transmission of the original writer's words. No wonder so many have placed such value on the Bible.